How's it going? Live stream. What's on my jumper? The X-Men. Oh, God. Sequoia got this for me for Christmas a couple years ago. It's so fun to see you all here. Lots of people here today, it seems like. That's exciting. I think we're doing 2 stories today. I know. We're doing 2 stories today. The first one, let's see, which one of these do I want to do first? The first one is going to be A Blind Date by Ray, and the second one's going to be Cedric at the Disco by Kate. A lot of highs here. So, it seems like my latency might be a little long, but hopefully you can all see and hear me okay. Yeah, the stories are gonna fight. Thank you for the hair compliments. I haven't had a haircut in almost a year. Somebody should tell Kate to come here if she can. It'd be nice to have both Ray and Kate here. Oh no! Well, I guess I could do Ray's first and then maybe Kate can show up. We'll see. Ooh, first time on the live stream. That's exciting. We're excited to have you here. Okay, well, hopefully bedtime doesn't take too long. If it does, the story will continue to be here in the future. Kate can't miss your story, Ray. Oh, okay. Should I do hers first then? Or we could just sit here for like an hour. Oh. Lol. Just an hour of cool hangs with the cool chat. Oh God, Sequoia's here. Oh no. I'm in trouble now. Sequoia, how is your goblet of wine prep going? I hope it's going well. Ah, Kate's here. Awesome. Then the only 2 people that matter are here, and I think we could probably get started. Just kidding. All 43 of you matter. What even is bedtime? I wouldn't know. Middle of the day here, and I have no memories. All right. What did I say I was going to start with? I don't remember. Pew, 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 pew. Yeah, it hasn't been 20 minutes of just sitting here yet. Oh, flip a coin. Okay. Do people have physical coins anymore? Ray doesn't want to go first. All right. We'll do Kate's first. Let's bring the chat somewhere I can keep an eye on y'all. Okay. This story is from our Halloween writing competition. It won Best Outfit Descriptions. And it's called Cedric at the Disco by Kate. It was October 29th, 2005, and the whole of Hogwarts was buzzing with the latest announcement from Dumbledore, declaring Hogwarts' first Halloween school disco for the evening of the 31st of October, a treat they all sorely needed after the first half term of fifth year. Umbridge had expressly forbidden the gathering, but Flitwick seemed confident that whatever he had done to her evening meal would mean the disco would still be going ahead, and she would be sleeping peacefully. Harry had been unsure about whether to go, but had decided it would be just what he needed to take his mind off all the weird dreams he had been having lately. He was sure it was his sleep deprivation that had made his eyes play tricks on him, but recently he could have sworn that he had seen a new and strangely familiar ghost disappearing around corridor corners. He shook his head. He really needed to take a break and blow off some steam. He stood and packed all his books into his bag before heading off to the Gryffindor common room. On the way, he bumped into Cho Chang. "Sorry, Cho," he said, flustered. They hadn't really spoken much recently, and when they had, she seemed to always be on the verge of tears. She looked to be much the same now, her icy blue eyes shimmering with unshed moisture as she chewed on her bottom lip before blurting out, "Harry, do you want to go to the disco with me?" Harry was dumbstruck momentarily, but didn't know how to let her down gently, and so instead, he found himself saying, "Sure, that sounds great. Meet you outside the Great Hall?" She seemed as surprised as he was that he had said yes, but a blush spread across her cheeks and she nodded in agreement. "Okay, Harry, see you on Saturday," Cho said as she hurried away. Harry could have sworn he heard a ghostly moan following her footsteps down the hall and a flash of silver again, but he shook his head and carried on up to the common room. The Gryffindor common room was even more chaotic than normal. Everyone was loudly discussing their outfits for the disco in 2 days' time, and Harry had never known such excitement. Owls had been arriving all week, bringing packages of clothes for people in every house. Harry had tried to keep his outfit as secret as possible, but he couldn't wait to see the looks on everyone's faces when they saw it. A passage of time. It was now the night of the Halloween disco. Harry was standing in the fifth-year bathroom of Gryffindor Tower, placing the final finishing touches to his outfit. He breathed a sigh of relief and stood straight to look at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, giving himself a lopsided smile before turning and leaving the dorm and heading down the stairs. As he entered, a hush fell over the assembled crowd as they drank in his incredible ensemble. Harry was wearing black skinny jeans with ripped knees, a white button-down shirt with a black pleather waistcoat unbuttoned, a silver-studded belt, a silver wallet chain, black and white Converse All-Stars, and immaculately applied eyeliner. Hermione and Ron stared as he sauntered over to them, their eyes wide at the sudden transformation. "There'd better be some decent music here tonight," he said, before they all walked down to the Great Hall together. Cho was waiting outside for him, and her aesthetic seemed to be rather different. She had gone for a white halter top, denim miniskirt, white platform trainers, and lashings of silver eyeshadow. "Harry," she stammered, you look, wow." Harry smirked before the smile was wiped from his face as a fully formed ghost manifested behind Cho. It couldn't be. Could it? It was. It was Cedric Diggory there in ghost form. Cho screamed and fainted, and Harry caught her in his arms as Cedric glowered at Harry. "What do you think you're doing?" Cedric growled, his ghostly voice softer than Harry was sure he'd intended it to be. Harry panicked. What on earth do you say to the ghost of the boy you saw die only months before? And when you're on a date with his girlfriend? Before Harry could reply, Cedric had let out a distraught moan and disappeared again. What in the name of Wizard Jesus just happened? Harry thought, helping Cho back to her feet. Suddenly, Harry lost focus on the pretty girl clinging to him like a life raft. Notes of music poured out from the entrance to the great hall that seemed to move his body of its own volition. He grabbed Cho's hand roughly and pulled her into the room that was lit only by floating pumpkin lanterns that had been charmed to change colors in time to the music. "Listen," Harry said roughly, his voice full of unspent emotion. "This is it. This is my song." Cho paused, confused as the unmistakable "Time to Dance" by Panic at the Disco rang out across the hall. Harry began dancing fervently as Cho watched on bemused. Neither of them were aware that there were two sets of eyes on them in darkened corners of the hall. Ghost Cedric floated a little off the floor, standing out like a sore thumb in the dark corner. He couldn't take his eyes off of Cho. He had never seen her look more beautiful than she did tonight. And here she was with the idiot who had gotten him murdered in the first place. He couldn't bring himself to blame Harry for the murder. Damn his Hufflepuff nature. But he was angry and bitter and heartbroken watching his beautiful girl, his Cho, trying to keep up with Harry's wild dancing. What he wouldn't give to be able to go over to her and take her hand and mosh with her. He resolved to do just that. It didn't matter that he didn't really have hands anymore. Just to dance beside her at this disco, that would be enough. In the opposite corner, another silvery apparition stood staring daggers towards the mismatched couple. As the music segued into "I write sins and not tragedies," the very much alive Draco Malfoy stepped into the light as the colors from the floating pumpkins bounced off his silver blonde hair. Draco was wearing black leather trousers so tight they seemed to be painted on, with knee-high dragon-hide boots, a skin-tight black tee with a dragon motif on the back, a silver and emerald green studded belt, and a black fedora with a silver stripe around the brim. Whew. He knew he looked as glorious as he felt, and the sea of girls vying for his attention parted as he strode into the middle of the dance floor with only one goal in mind. He was going to dance with Harry Potter if it was the last thing he did. The throngs of students had formed a circle around Harry and Cho, which Harry would have realized if he hadn't been so utterly lost in Dance, Dance by Fall Out Boy, now blaring throughout the hall. He suddenly felt Cho stop dancing, and he stood to catch his breath before realizing they were alone in the center of the room. Before he could ask why, the furious ghost of Cedric Diggory had manifested between him and Cho, and was speaking loudly to be heard over the music. "Cho," Cedric said, "I know this is weird, and I know it's hard, but my heart can't take standing on the sidelines anymore. May I have this dance?" Cho dissolved into tears, nodding and weeping at the idea of being able to date her boyfriend again, even if he was more spiritual than physical these days. "I can't believe you're here," she breathed. "I never thought I would see you again." Tears spilled from her eyes as she looked into the face of the boy that would always hold her heart. She had dreamt of this moment every night since he had died, but never did she believe that she would find her Cedric at the disco. Stepping back to give them privacy, Harry shook his head. Well, that solved one problem. If she was occupied with Cedric, then at least he wouldn't have to deal with telling her that he was gay. As Harry watched them leave the dance floor and begin to dance in a facsimile of unison at the side of the hall, he felt, rather than saw, the presence of Malfoy beside him. "What do you say, Scarhead? Fancy a dance?" drawled Malfoy, a bright grin on his face. Harry's smile matched his. "I thought you'd never ask," Harry said, before reaching out and cupping Draco's face in his hands, planting a firm kiss on Draco's soft, spearmint-scented lips. Draco sought entrance and just briefly touched the tip of his tongue to Harry's before breaking away and clearing his throat. That could come later. But for now, Draco wanted to finally be able to tell everyone what he had kept to himself for months now, that the Chosen One had chosen him. Harry and Draco never broke their hold on each other, grateful that the magical turntables had chosen "I'm With You" by Avril Lavigne as the next song to play. Harry rested his head on Draco's shoulder, and they swayed together on the spot to every last beat of the song. This was their song now, and not too far away, Cedric and Cho felt the same. Harry and Draco pressed their bodies up against each other, oblivious to the whispers and stares all around them, reveling in no longer having to pretend they were anything other than desperately in love. When the song ended, Draco twirled Harry in his arms before dipping him to the ground and placing a soft kiss on his lips once more. Pushing past everyone else, Harry and Draco made their way hand in hand over to where Cedric and Cho stood. Cho smiled brightly as she looked up, feeling happiness she had never thought she could again. "No hard feelings, Harry," Cedric offered peaceably. But as Draco pressed his groin up against Harry's arse, Harry could only offer a small smile and a nod. Judging by what he could feel, there were going to be some very hard feelings tonight, and Harry couldn't wait. The end. Oh my goodness gracious. Kate! That was very silly. Thank you for sending that to us. Thank you for writing that for our competition. Those song choices were A+. Oh my goodness. Very silly. Nice job. Don't be sorry. That was very good. Oh, woo. Phew. Yes, I think that story needs a playlist of its own for the disco dance party. All right, are y'all ready for a second story? This one is by Ray. They wrote this because of a prompt in the Discord, a bot prompt in the Discord, I think, and then I maybe bullied them into sending that to me. So this one's pretty silly. I'm excited to read this to everyone. It's called A Blind Date. And hopefully we're all ready. Let's do this. A Blind Date by Ray. This whole blind date business was rather more difficult than Albus had thought, honestly. It had been a while, of course, since his last attempt to get into dating had gone horribly wrong, and giving it another try was already taking up a lot of courage. But now that he sat here, in the empty room, he was beginning to get even more nervous than he had been at the prospect of someone finding out that he had once dated an evil, dark wizard who planned to rule over the world and death itself. What if he was too old? He knew some people felt a bit bothered by a beard while kissing, and he had, well, there was no way around it, an exceptional amount of beard. Was he too famous? Basically everyone in the wizarding world knew his name. Could he really have a blind date in the original sense if anyone he would be presented with already knew his name? And, oh God, what if he ended up with Mundungus Fletcher? He knew for a fact he had signed himself up for several blind date courses at the same company as Albus because he had missed Harry duty twice for a rather kinky adventure with Dolores Umbridge. Albus sighed. There was simply no way around it. He would have to sit here and find out. It had all started harmless enough. The nice lady at the counter, though looking surprised, had given him a sheet to fill out with several preferences. It was odd, after so many years of keeping it a secret, to simply check the little box for men, but weirdly freeing in a way. After that, it had just been about scales and numbers. Yes, he liked his men a bit rebellious. Criminals. Maybe a little, just so he wouldn't be too bored. He did not want to end up with Cornelius Fudge. That much was for sure. On a scale from 1 to 10, he ticked a 4, just to be sure. Hair. Well, honestly, he had enough hair for the two of them. Did he like cuddling after sex? No way to tell. Gellert hadn't cuddled much, and he had enjoyed their time together. Let's simply check no. Were noses important to him? What an odd question. Albus had chuckled and vividly remembered the time Aberforth had broken his nose. Well, it would be ludicrous to expect the perfect nose from someone while his clearly showed the marks of past mistakes. No, great magical powers were not important to him by all means. Oh, sorry. No, great magical powers were not important to him, but by all means, it would be nice to have someone to talk to once in a while. Constantly knowing more than everyone else, why, it was exhausting. So he chose the number 10, just to see what would come out of it. Would he end up with Mad-Eye Moody? Maybe, but he could imagine worse than spending the day with Alastair, date or no date. That at least wouldn't be a total loss. And here he sat now, at the table in the little restaurant the agency had picked for them, nervously shifting his fork for the 3rd time. Every time the little bell announced that the door had opened, he looked up, excitement peaking, his hands sweating, and then, finally, after the 5th time his head had shifted up, oh no, in came Lord Voldemort. There must be laws, Albus thought, surely, against dating a former student. There had to be laws to get him out of the binding blind date contract he had signed that was meant to ensure that no one got stood up. This could not possibly, he could not. Voldemort caught his gaze, froze for a second, then gracefully stepped toward the table and sat down. No use looking for my date further, is there? He asked with his usually high voice. I, Lord Voldemort, am supposed to have a match with you of all people, old man. Albus's shoulders sank. So it would seem. Oh no, this is gonna go. These are gonna merge into one voice. Here we go. I made bad decisions. How could this have happened? He asked, clear confusion in the high voice, and Albus sighed. I genuinely do not know, Tom. It seems someone must have cheated with their sheets because someone seemed to feel the need to rate their criminality at a 4 when there very clearly are 10. Voldemort snorted. Well, someone seems to have rated their "how annoying would your friends describe you" levels at 0, which I personally find very hard to believe. Albus spluttered. My friends always speak in the highest tones of me. So do mine, Voldemort announced with a wolfish grin, because otherwise I murder them. Dumbledore frowned. He had heard that people tended to lie during blind dates, and he had figured he might as well make his whole profile look a little prettier. But who could have ever expected this? So, you're looking for a relationship, he finally asked, trying to get the conversation back to civility. Voldemort shifted on his chair nervously, taking a sip of the wine Albus had poured into his glass while waiting. What can I say? Being the Dark Lord of all can make a man feel lonely. No one to sit next to me on my throne made of the bones of my enemies? Harry Potter has rejected my friend request 5 times now. Ah, Tom, you know how children are. You kill their parents once, they'll still hold it over you 15 years later. I know, he who does not catch sarcasm replied dramatically. You'd think he'd be grateful. When I killed my parents, let's just say I would have gone out with myself happily. Yes, I can imagine, Albus replied dryly, taking a sip of his own glass of wine. Any chance you could get in a good word for me? Voldemort asked, leaning forward now, his snake-like eyes gleaming conspiratorially. He always listens to you. Pardon, Albus shrugged. I'm not planning to talk to him until you've stopped trying to use your connection to him against the Order. Ah, Voldemort replied, regret audible in his voice. Such a shame. Well, I suppose I have to get his attention in other ways. You are rather difficult to ignore, Dumbledore replied with a little nod. They ordered their food from a very worried-looking young waitress. Voldemort seemed determined to enjoy his night out, ordering 3 main courses and 2 desserts with a little hungry hiss. You're paying, I assume? He asked Albus, who looked taken aback for a second before nodding with a sigh. He might as well be a gentleman tonight. No point in going home alone, really, when he might as well simply face the facts. He had a type, and apparently that type was murdering lunatic with a superiority complex. More wine, please, he muttered toward the waitress, who seemed to almost graze his chair while trying to stay as far away from possible from Voldemort while serving. I'm gonna need it. The evening was surprisingly pleasant. Once the uncomfortable topic of being on 2 different sides in a wizarding war was off the table, they found they had a lot of similarities. Lots of people to use, more power than people around them could ever imagine, issues with hair growth. No matter what I do, it simply doesn't grow back, Voldemort entrusted him with a little whisper. You'd think with all the magic I can do, but nothing. Albus cleared his throat slightly. Is that also what, with your nose? Voldemort raised a non-existent eyebrow. Why, what is wrong with my nose? Oh, Albus replied. Nothing. So, you asked for my secret. I have to say, simply doing absolutely nothing about it did the trick. Grows like crazy. I'll remember that, Voldemort replied with a solemn nod. So, how's Snape doing? Albus, spooning into his dessert enthusiastically, looked up. Severus? Oh, well, he does what he loves. ruining students' lives. He fits right in with a few of the other people I've employed. Good man, Voldemort muttered. Good man. He looked up, correcting himself in panic. I mean, what a horrible traitor! Oh, it's fine, Dumbledore waved off his concerns. I already know he's a double agent. Well, Voldemort gave him a sheepish smile. What can I say? I simply know how to make them loyal. He raised one of his long, white fingers, and Albus froze as they neared his mouth and then entangled in his beard, until Voldemort finally pulled his hand back, ice cream on the tip of his finger. You dropped a bit of your dessert, he explained, his voice hoarse in seduction. I could tell that that was what I was doing, right? Yeah, that's what I was doing. Albus swallowed. Why? Thank you, Tom. How attentive. Voldemort, his hand still raised, stared at him into those crystal blue eyes, and Albus, too, found himself unable to look away. I can do this. This is very good. Finally, after a few seconds of sexual tension in which neither of them noticed the waitress quickly leading everyone outside behind their backs, they leaned over the table at the same time, their lips crashing together in a battle of tongue and will. Half the plates and candles fell down the table. Half of Voldemort's body ended up splayed on it, but neither of them cared. One hand tangling up in Albus's beard yet again, Voldemort pulled him closer to his side, showing a predatory grin. Now I've got you right where I want you, old man. Dumbledore merely chuckled. It seemed in this particular lucky instance, his beard wasn't too much of a hindrance after all. The end. Well, thank you very much, Ray. That was so cursed and so good. I'm very proud of you. Thank you so much for sending it to me. We did need it. Yep. I'm glad you all enjoyed all of that silliness that we did here today. It was very fun to read some very silly stuff. Nice to hang out with you all. Ooh, silly, silly. I hope you all saw Sequoia in the chat. She says that story times are now always going to be the third Saturday of the month at noon Mountain Time. We're trying to have more of a set schedule instead of a disaster. Alrighty, well, thanks so much for coming, everyone. I think I'm going to log off now. Talk to you all next time.